Scott Alexander, continuing my analysis of Aristotle's 26 Propositions of Philosophy, located in Maimonides Introduction to Volume 2 of his Guide to the Perplexed. In this video, I'll be dealing with what I call his propositions of continuity and discontinuity, which are propositions 13 through 16. I'll briefly introduce the whole concept of continuity and go through each of its propositions. I'll explain how Maimonides will use these propositions in his grand proof for the existence of God in the next chapter of the Guide. These propositions are about the continuity and discontinuity of change. That would be proposition 13. The continuity of motion, that's 14. The continuity of time, that's 15. And the discontinuity of number, that's proposition 16. The general importance of the concept of continuity for Maimonides was the realization which he set forth in proposition 13, which reads, quote, "None of the types of change can be continuous except the motion from place to place, and only when it is in rotation." Maimonides uses this proposition to show that there is no continuity possible in motion except in the motion of rotation, and by that he specifically means the rotation of the heavenly spheres. Rotation is the only motion that could persist uninterruptedly. None of the discontinuous motions of our world could do so. Those other non-continuous motions are non-rotational motions. They go from up to down and vice versa. They go from here to there. Any of our movements about the house, any animal's pursuit of prey, any plant's turn toward the sun, are all discontinuous motions that will come to an end. Still, there must be something that keeps all those discontinuous motions in our world moving. In Maimonides' paradigm, they depend upon the eternally continuous rotation of the heavens to keep them moving. When Maimonides says here that, quote, "none of the types of change can be continuous except the motion from place to place," he has in mind the four types of change that we met in Proposition 4. Substantial change, quantitative change, qualitative change, and change of place. None of those four could be continuous with the sole exception of rotational change of place. And that's because all the other changes are between opposites. Changes in substance are between being and nothingness, and vice versa. Similarly, changes in quantity are from larger to smaller, and vice versa. Changes in quality are from hot to cold, or white to black, and the reverse. Change of place is also between opposites, in most cases, from here to there, except in the case of rotation, which is from the starting point back to itself, from here back to here, rather than from here to there. The significance of these changes being between opposites is that in any change between opposites, the motion or change must halt or turn back. That means there must be a moment of rest. That moment of rest is the discontinuity inherent in any change between opposites. But there's no inherent need for rest in continuous rotational change of place, because that motion is not between opposites. Still, even that motion requires a cause, just as any other motion requires a cause. To avoid an infinite regress of causes, the ultimate cause of the continuous motion of the spheres must be something incorporeal and separate from the spheres. Contemplating the consequences of the doctrine of continuity and discontinuity, Maimonides recognizes that the four kinds of motions manifest themselves in an order of priority. And this is borne out by his next proposition. That proposition is complicated, but I'll break it down. The priority of motions, proposition 14. Motion from place to place is primary in time and first by nature. Generation and corruption are preceded by alteration, which is preceded by the approach of the cause of change to the object of change. Nothing grows or decreases without previous genesis or corruption. Now, I submit that the way Maimonides wrote this proposition, it's hard for us to understand. So let's slow down in order to take it line by line and clause by clause. The general idea in this proposition is that we can rank the various kinds of changes and motions in an order of priority. So Maimonides starts this proposition by stating that, quote, motion from place to place is primary in time and first by nature. Thus, motion from place to place in rotation has conceptual priority in that it's the most important type of motion. And it has temporal priority in that it came first in the Aristotelian eternalism scheme. All the other discontinuous motions are the indirect byproduct of the heavens' rotation. Thus, the first thing we notice about the prioritization of motions is that at its apex, the heavens move the whole by continuous motion called rotational change of place, which is conceptually prior and temporally prior to all the other discontinuous motions. This rotation is the ultimate cause of and background for all the other changes and motions on earth, but even it must have a cause. To avoid regress, that cause must be single, unmoved, and incorporeal. In other words, it has to be something that is completely different in every way from everything else. That could only be God. So, focusing on those discontinuous motions of change in our world, we come to the next line of Proposition 14. Generation and corruption, he says, are preceded by alteration, which is preceded by the approach of the cause of change to the object of change. Let's break that down. Three things happen in this sentence in reverse order. I'm going to rearrange those into our own way of speaking, avoiding his Semitic sentence structure, which is opposite to our way of laying out priorities. First comes what he calls the approach of change, then alteration, and then generation. The first step, then, in the system of priorities, when he talks about the approach of change, he means the original spherical motion, which is change of place, which then precedes the alteration of the elemental material, which precedes the generation of new things. What he means is that before any new substances can be created, the heavens must move all the elements into place so that the potential for the generation of the new substance is prepared. The second step is that this alteration results in the substantial generation of new material beings. Now comes the last line of Proposition 14. Nothing grows or decreases without previous genesis or corruption. Once again, the syntax is reversed from the way in which we lay out a table of priorities. What he means is that once we have generated the substance, only then do we find that it grows, like a plant grows. This growth, or its opposite, diminution, like the wilting of the plant, is how quantitative change expresses itself in the substance. Quantitative growth only comes after generation because only substances grow. And so for our third step, this generation and corruption then precedes all quantitative growth and diminution, as well as all further qualitative alterations affecting the changing substance, like change of color or temperature. Working back through all those changes must bring us to the existence of the single incorporeal unmoved mover engendering all motion. However, we note that the Torah's account of creation ex nihilo is precisely the opposite of Aristotle's eternalist account. Aristotle's account starts from a prime mover engendering the continuous motions of the heavens. The Torah's account, which Maimonides accepts, makes creation both prior and time and importance to the existence of any other motion in our world. In other words, it reverses Aristotle's order of the prioritization of motion and change. Having developed the theory of the continuity of heavenly motion, which engenders our world of discontinuous motions, we turn to another continuity, which is in fact connected to the continuity of motion, which is the continuity of time. Proposition 15. Time is an accident attached to motion, and one is never found without the other. Motion is only possible in time, and the intellect cannot conceive time except in connection with motion. Therefore, things which do not move have no relation to time. The point of this proposition is that since God has no relation to motion, he consequently has no relation to time. We shouldn't use words expressing time when we talk about God. Now let's talk about the continuity of time. Time is an unbroken continuity because of its necessary connection to the continuous rotation of the heavens. In order to understand Proposition 15, we need to break it down to yield 4 sub-propositions. The first sub-proposition is that time is an accident, not a substance. That is to say, it has no independent existence. That's because time is a conceptual composite of 3 different elements, none of which have independent existence. The past, which is already gone, the future, which is not yet, and the present moment, the now, which is not in time or measured by it. So time has no independent status or existence. This brings us to our second sub-proposition of Proposition 15. Time is always connected with motion in such a manner that it cannot exist without it. In other words, where there is motion, there is simultaneously time. And that's because time is defined as the enumeration of any motion from its starting point to its end point, in countable units of time like minutes or hours. And then we have our third sub-proposition from Proposition 15. And the intellect cannot conceive time except in connection with motion. In other words, without motion, we would not sense time. Maimonides states that time is attached to motion, or in some translations, it reads consequent upon motion. The reason that Maimonides says that time is attached to or consequent upon motion was that motion is itself an accident of the moving substance, but you can't have an accident on an accident, since an accident is not an independent substance that could carry another accident. So Maimonides is trying to get away from calling time an accident. Motion, an accident itself, could not be subject to another accident. So the peculiar accident of time is like no other accident. It is irreducible. It is undefinable in any other terms, which is why Aristotle made time one of the ultimate categories of all things. The fourth sub-proposition of Proposition 15 is that anything that does not exist in motion also does not exist in time. What Maimonides is talking about here are the incorporeals, including God, the angels, and pure thought, pure mind. Those entities are not in motion, nor are they in matter, nor in time. And that's why God is not subject to time. Now, the key to our understanding of time and motion is that we cannot understand time and motion without grasping that they are directly related to each other, such that you can always tell time from motion and motion from time. And that's why Maimonides insists that time, place, and motion are systems of relations between real moving things. Something that looks similar to time, in that it always goes with motion, but instead expresses the discontinuity of motion, is number. And number is the subject of Proposition 16. Nothing incorporeal can be understood to be numerable unless it is a force in a body. Such forces must then be counted due to the multiplicity of their matter or the multiplicity of the substances in which they exist. Conversely, since the incorporeal things cannot be physical bodies or forces in bodies, they cannot be understood to be numerable except when they are causes and effects of each other. The point of this will be that there can't be two prime unmoved movers. That is to say, there can't be two gods, since incorporeal beings are not numerable. Since God must be incorporeal, God must be the one beyond number. The fact that physical things move in discontinuous motion shows that each one of those things and each of their movements are countable and numerable. The embodied forces, like forms or accidents in bodies, what Maimonides calls forces in a body, kochot baguf, those are only numerable due to their connection with bodies. This chain of discontinuous universal motions must look back to a divine mover that is incorporeal, innumerable, and continuous. Finally, there are those incorporeal entities that are called separate existences. In Hebrew, the nivdalim, meaning that they're entities that are entirely separate from matter and have no connection to matter. My general rule is to classify these as not numerable unless we can articulate a good reason to make them numerable. They're generally non-numerable because they're not physical, and only physical things are numerable. But we do have some good reasons to make some of them numerable. So, for instance, Maimonides allows that 10 of these separate entities, the souls of the spheres, could be considered numerable as 10 causes and effects. Thus, he nods to the emanation theory of his day, that a prime intellect gives rise to a second, which causes a third, and so on until we reach 10 souls, the number of the souls of the planetary spheres. Maimonides, in this philosophical proposition, does not venture to speculate whether human minds or souls are numerable and individual after they separate from our bodies after death. But in his Mishneh Torah, he suggests a distinction of degree and not just of cause and effect. Just like one sage or rabbi would be on a higher spiritual level than another. In his essay called Chelek, he also argued that there's an individual eternal place in heaven for the soul of each committed Jew. Thus, there could be numerosity and individuality among some souls. He does, however, make an important cautionary point about this type of speculation. He wrote that it would be better to avoid, quote, such intricate disciplines which our mind can scarcely comprehend and which cannot furnish any principles for the explanation of other subjects. Simply put, This was a warning not to blunder into these divine science issues until you've reached a comprehensive understanding of the subject. He does discuss the life of souls, if not their numerability, in various other places in the guide, just not here in these philosophical propositions. In the next video in this series, I'll talk about the causation propositions, which are propositions 17 through 20. I'll explain the meaning of causation for Maimonides and how causation works. I hope you've enjoyed this talk. Thank you very much for listening. You may contact me at scottmalexander@rcn.com with comments, questions, and criticism. Please click on the description panel on this video on YouTube to see links to documents that I've mentioned. Visit my website, Maimonides-guide.com, to see my commentary essays on each chapter of Maimonides' Guide of the Perplexed, currently completed through the entire first volume of the guide, and now including my commentary on the introduction to the second volume, which includes the 26 Aristotelian Propositions. On that website, you can also find associated essays I've written, podcasts, videos, and important links. And, of course, please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe, and hit the YouTube notification bell. Thank you.